The pain shooting through my lower back when I hit the marble floor was nothing compared to the burning humiliation spreading across my face. I was 57 years old. I had built a $12 million real estate empire from absolutely nothing. I had survived the devastating loss of my husband 6 years ago, and I was lying on the cold floor of my own dining room on Christmas Day, staring up at 23 shocked faces while my son-in-law stood over me with his hand still extended from the shove. "That chair belongs to my father." Derek's voice was loud, slurred from too much whiskey during cocktail hour. His face was flushed red, whether from alcohol or rage I couldn't tell. "Get out of there, Helena. It's time for new traditions in this family." The silence in the room was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. My best friend Maggie was already pushing her chair back, her face twisted in fury. My daughter Sophia stood frozen 3 feet away, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. And Derek just stood there above me with this satisfied smirk on his face, like he'd finally put the difficult mother-in-law in her place. That chair, the chair at the head of my dining table, the chair where my husband Richard had sat for 32 years of our marriage. The chair I'd kept empty for 6 years since his heart attack took him from me at 62. The chair that Derek knew, that everyone in this room knew, was sacred to me. I felt Maggie's hands on my arms, helping me sit up. The room started spinning slightly, whether from the fall or the shock or the sheer disbelief of what had just happened. "Helena, don't move too fast," Maggie said quietly, but I could hear the rage vibrating in her voice. "We need to make sure nothing's broken." "I'm fine," I managed to say, though my hip was screaming and I could feel what would definitely be a massive bruise forming. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. Not even close. Derek had already turned away from me, settling himself into Richard's chair with this triumphant expression. He picked up the wine glass that had been set at that place. I always set it, even though the chair stayed empty, and took a long drink. "Finally," he said to no one in particular. "Finally, some sense in this house." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw him out of my house right that second. But as Maggie helped me to my feet, as I looked at my daughter's pale, terrified face, as I felt the eyes of 23 people on me, family, friends, people who had known me for decades and respected me, something cold and calculating settled in my chest instead of the hot rage I expected. "Maggie," I said quietly, so only she could hear me. "Call your office first thing tomorrow morning. I need the trust documents. The property deeds. Everything." Maggie's eyes met mine, and I saw understanding flash there immediately. She'd been my attorney and best friend for 20 years. She knew exactly what I was thinking. "Consider it done," she whispered back. "And Helena? He just committed assault in front of 23 witnesses. We can work with that." I nodded slowly, still staring at Derek in Richard's chair. My chair now, I suppose, since Richard was gone. The chair I'd preserved as a memorial, as a way to keep him present at our family celebrations. The chair this arrogant, insecure little boy thought he could just take. Sophia finally moved, rushing to my side. "Mom, oh my God. Mom, are you okay? I'm so sorry, Her voice broke. She was crying, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm all right, sweetheart," I told her, even though I wasn't. "Help me to my room. I need a moment." "No," Derek called out from his stolen throne. "The dinner's ready. Everyone sit down. Helena can rest after we eat. She's fine, aren't you, Helena?" Just a little stumble. A stumble. He was calling it a stumble. This man had put both hands on my shoulders and shoved me backward with enough force that I'd fallen completely to the floor, and he was calling it a stumble. I turned to look at him directly for the first time since I'd gotten up. "Derek," I said, and my voice came out steady and cold. "You and Sophia need to leave, right now." He laughed. Actually laughed. "We're not going anywhere. For once I'm sitting where I belong, where the man of the family should sit." The man of the family. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "Derek, please," Sophia whispered, tugging on his arm. "Please, let's just go. We can talk about this tomorrow. Please." He shook her off roughly. "I'm not leaving, Soph. Your mother needs to understand that things are changing around here. I'm not some employee she can order around. You're a guest in my home," I said quietly, "and you just assaulted me. So yes, Derek, you are leaving. Tonight." The room had gone completely silent again. Everyone was watching this unfold like it was some kind of theatrical performance. Mrs. Chen from the country club sat with her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. My business partner, James, looked like he wanted to intervene, but wasn't sure how. Maggie stood next to me like a guard dog, one hand on my arm, her phone already in her other hand. Derek's face was getting redder. "I'm not going anywhere. This family needs a man to lead it, and clearly that's going to have to be me since Richard is gone, and you're too stubborn to accept it." Something in me snapped at hearing Richard's name come out of his mouth. Not the hot, explosive kind of snap, the cold, calculated kind. The kind that had made me millions in real estate by knowing exactly when to walk away from a bad deal and exactly how to make sure I came out on top. "Enjoy that chair tonight, Derek," I said calmly, "because it will be the last time you sit in anything that belongs to me." He blinked, confused by my tone. He'd expected me to yell, to cry, to make a scene. He didn't know what to do with cold, quiet fury. "Mom," Sophia started, but I held up my hand. "Sophia, sweetheart, I need to speak with you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, at my office, alone." I looked at Derek. "Just my daughter, not you." "Anything you need to say to my wife, you can say in front of me," Derek declared. "We're a unit, a team. Unlike you, we actually communicate." I smiled then. Not a warm smile. Not even a particularly mean smile. Just a smile that said I knew something he didn't. "Tomorrow morning, Sophia, 9 o'clock. We have decisions to make." I could see the fear in my daughter's eyes. She knew that tone. She'd grown up hearing that tone when I was about to make a major business move. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, Mom. I'll be there." "Good." I turned to address the room. "I apologize for this disruption to our Christmas celebration. Please, everyone, enjoy the meal that's been prepared. I need to rest for a bit, but I'll rejoin you shortly." Maggie helped me toward the hallway that led to my private suite, but I heard Derek call out behind me. "Running away now? Typical. Can't handle a little truth about your control issues?" I stopped walking. Turned slowly. "Derek, you have until noon tomorrow to remove your belongings from the apartment you're currently living in. The one at 142 Beacon Street, the one that was my wedding gift to Sophia." His face went pale. "You can't. The property is held in a trust that I control until Sophia turns 35. That's 3 more years. And as of this moment, you are no longer welcome there. Maggie will have the official notice delivered by 9 a.m. "You can't kick me out of my own home!" Derek was on his feet now, knocking over the wine glass. Red wine spread across my white tablecloth like blood. "It's not your home," I said simply. "It never was. You'll receive the paperwork in the morning. Maggie, shall we?" I didn't wait for his response. Didn't wait to see Sophia's reaction. I walked out of that dining room with my head high and my back straight, even though my hip was screaming in pain and I wanted nothing more than to collapse and cry. Maggie closed my bedroom door behind us and immediately went to my ensuite bathroom to get ice. I sank down onto the edge of my bed, and only then did I let the tears come. "That son of a bitch," Maggie said, coming back with a towel full of ice. "That absolute son of a bitch. Helena, we can have him arrested for assault. 23 witnesses, including a judge, 2 attorneys, and a police captain who all happened to be at your Christmas dinner." I pressed the ice against my hip, wincing. No arrests. That would hurt Sophia more than him. "Sophia needs to leave him," Maggie said bluntly. "You know that, right? This isn't the first red flag. This is just the first time he's been stupid enough to do it in public." I did know that. God, I knew that. I'd known something was wrong for months. The way Sophia had started canceling our monthly lunches. The way she flinched sometimes when Derek raised his voice. The way she'd lost weight and stopped talking about her own career, her own dreams. Everything becoming about what Derek wanted, what Derek thought, what Derek needed. I have a private investigator's report in my safe, I told Maggie quietly. I had Derek checked out 3 weeks ago. He has $47,000 in credit card debt that Sophia doesn't know about. He's been living above his means for years, trying to look successful. There's also a complaint from his previous job about aggressive behavior toward female colleagues, and an ex-girlfriend who filed a temporary restraining order 5 years ago for stalking and controlling behavior. Maggie stared at me. Jesus, Helena, why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know what to do with the information. I tried to talk to Sophia about it gently 2 weeks ago. She defended him, said he was just stressed about work, that I didn't understand him, that he was a good man who just needed support. I wiped my eyes. She asked me to promise not to do anything drastic, to give him time to adjust to being part of our family. And you promised? I said I'd think about it, but I didn't promise. I looked at my best friend, my attorney, the woman who'd stood by me through Richard's death and every business battle since. I updated my will and her trust last week. The trust is ironclad now. If Derek tries to get access to Sophia's inheritance, if he tries to manipulate her into suing me, if he tries anything, she loses access to the principal until all litigation is resolved. And in the event of divorce, there are additional protections. Smart, Maggie said approvingly. Very smart, but Helena, that doesn't protect her from him emotionally or physically. I know. I pressed the ice harder against my hip, welcoming the pain because it was easier than the pain in my chest when I thought about my daughter trapped with that man. That's why tomorrow morning, she's going to have to choose him or her family, him or her inheritance, him or her safety. You think she'll choose right? I don't know, I admitted, and saying it out loud made it hurt even more. She loves him, or she thinks she does. She's invested 3 years in this marriage. She doesn't want to admit it was a mistake. The sunk cost fallacy, Maggie said. We see it all the time in divorce cases. Women who stay because they've already invested so much time, so much emotion, so much of themselves. I nodded. But I also know my daughter, and I know that seeing him push me tonight, seeing what he's capable of when he doesn't get his way, that scared her. Really scared her. Did you see her face? I did. She looked terrified. Because she saw her future, I said quietly. She saw that in a few years, it could be her on that floor instead of me. And Sophia is smart. She's always been smart. She just needed to see the truth clearly. Maggie sat down next to me on the bed. So what's the plan? You kick Derek out tomorrow, serve him with eviction papers, which, by the way, I already have drafted because I've been expecting something like this for months. And then what? And then I offer Sophia a choice, a very clear choice. She can go with him, stay married, live wherever they can afford together on his $95,000 salary and his mountain of debt. Or she can end her marriage, file for divorce, and come home where she's safe and loved and has an actual future beyond being some insecure man's emotional punching bag. You'll need leverage, Maggie said thoughtfully. Derek won't just roll over. Men like him, when they lose control, they fight dirty. We have leverage. 23 witnesses to tonight's assault. The restraining order from his ex, the debt he's hidden from Sophia, his employment issues, and, I paused, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. And I have something else. I pulled up my text messages and showed Maggie a thread from 3 days ago. Messages from a number I didn't recognize, but that had identified itself as Derek's colleague. Messages warning me that Derek had been talking about me at work, calling me a controlling old bitch who wouldn't get out of the way. Messages saying Derek had told multiple people he was tired of waiting for the old woman to die so Sophia could inherit. Maggie's face went hard as stone. You need to show this to Sophia. Tomorrow, I said, along with everything else. The PI report, the financial documents, the updated trust, all of it. She deserves to see exactly who she married. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds from the dining room. I could hear voices but couldn't make out words. Were they continuing the dinner? Was Derek still holding court in Richard's chair? Was Sophia trying to apologize to everyone, to smooth things over the way she always did? I should go back out there, I said, starting to stand. Maggie put a hand on my shoulder. No, you should stay here and rest. Let them see that Derek's actions have consequences. Let them see that you're hurt, because you are hurt, Helena. Let them sit with the discomfort of what he did. She was right. Of course she was right. Maggie was always right about these things. I'll go back out, Maggie continued. I'll make sure everyone knows you're okay but resting. I'll make sure the conversation stays on what Derek did, not on what you're going to do about it. And I'll watch him. I'll watch how he behaves now that you're not there to see it. Thank you, I whispered, for everything, for being here, for being you. Maggie hugged me carefully, mindful of my bruised hip. We've been through worse than this together. Remember when Richard died and those vultures tried to buy you out of your own company at pennies on the dollar? I smiled despite everything. And you helped me fight them off and end up doubling our market value. Exactly. We're good at fighting, you and me, and we're especially good at winning. She stood up, straightened her dress. Get some rest, real rest. I'll handle things out there, and I'll come back to check on you in an hour. After she left, I lay back on my bed, still holding the ice to my hip. The ceiling above me was the same ceiling I'd stared at for countless nights after Richard died. The same ceiling I'd stared at while grieving, while planning, while figuring out how to move forward without him. Richard would have been horrified by tonight. He would have thrown Derek out himself, probably physically. But Richard was gone, and I had to handle this myself. I thought about that chair, the empty chair that I'd maintained for 6 years as a tribute to my husband. Some people thought it was morbid. Derek certainly thought it was pathetic. But to me, it represented something important. It represented the fact that Richard had been here, that he'd been real, that he'd built this life with me, and he deserved to be remembered. Derek wanted that chair because he wanted the power it represented, the position at the head of the table, the patriarch role. But he didn't understand that true power doesn't come from where you sit. It comes from what you build, who you protect, and how you handle yourself when someone tries to tear you down. Tomorrow morning, Derek would wake up to eviction notices. By noon, he'd be out of the apartment. By the end of the week, if I had my way, he'd be served with divorce papers. And that chair would stay empty. Because it wasn't about Derek or his father or his pathetic need to feel important. It was about Richard. It was about love and memory and respect. All things Derek would never understand. I closed my eyes, letting the ice numb the pain in my hip, and started making mental lists of everything that needed to happen tomorrow. Every call that needed to be made, every document that needed to be signed, every conversation that needed to be had. Derek thought pushing me out of that chair would give him power. He had no idea that all he'd done was sign his own exit papers. When I finally opened my eyes again, the light outside had shifted. I checked my phone. 45 minutes had passed. I could still hear voices from the dining room, quieter now. The dinner must be winding down. I stood up slowly, testing my hip. It hurt, but it was bearable. I was going to have a massive bruise tomorrow, but nothing was broken. Just like the rest of me, hurt, but not broken. Never broken. I walked to my closet and changed into fresh clothes, fixed my hair, reapplied my makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a 57-year-old woman who'd been pushed to the floor in her own home on Christmas Day. But I also saw a woman who'd survived worse. A woman who'd built an empire. a woman who was about to protect her daughter with every resource at her disposal. Derek thought he'd won tonight when he took that chair. He was about to learn what losing actually looked like. 3 years ago, I actually wanted to like Derek Brennan. I remember the night Sophia first brought him to dinner. It was a Tuesday in March, unseasonably warm for Boston. She'd called me that morning, nervous excitement in her voice. "Mom, I'm bringing someone to dinner tonight, someone important. His name is Derek, and I really, really like him." My daughter was 29 then, focused almost entirely on her marketing career, living alone in a small apartment in Cambridge that she insisted on paying for herself, even though I'd offered to help. She rarely dated seriously. So when she said important, I paid attention. Derek arrived in a well-cut navy suit, carrying flowers for me and a bottle of expensive wine. He was handsome in that conventional way, tall, dark hair, blue eyes, good posture. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, called me Mrs. Ashford until I insisted on Helena. "Sophia's told me so much about you," he said as we settled in the living room before dinner. "About how you and your husband built your real estate company from nothing. That's incredibly impressive." He asked intelligent questions about the business. He listened when I talked about Richard, about how we'd started with one small property and grown it into what it was today. He seemed genuinely interested, genuinely respectful, and he was attentive to Sophia in a way that made my heart warm. He touched her hand when she talked. He smiled at her jokes. He included her in every conversation, never talked over her. "He seems nice," I told Maggie on the phone that night after they'd left. "Really nice. Stable job, good manners, clearly crazy about her." "But?" Maggie had known me too long not to hear the hesitation. "I don't know. Something felt slightly off, like he was performing. But maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I'm just not ready to share my daughter with anyone." "Trust your gut," Maggie had said. "Your gut is usually right." But I didn't trust my gut. I wanted Sophia to be happy. I wanted her to have what Richard and I had, a true partnership, real love. So I ignored that tiny voice of doubt. The relationship moved fast. 6 months of dating. Then Derek proposed. Sophia was radiant when she showed me the ring. Not expensive, which I actually appreciated. It meant he wasn't trying to buy his way into her affections with money he probably didn't have. "I'm so happy, Mom," she told me, hugging me tight. "He's everything I've been looking for. He's ambitious, he's smart, he wants to build a life together." I threw them an engagement party, invited Derek's mother, a quiet, nervous woman who seemed uncomfortable in my Beacon Hill home. Derek's father had died when he was 12, she told me. Heart attack, sudden. She'd raised Derek alone on a teacher's salary. "He's always been determined to make something of himself," she said, pride evident in her voice. "To prove he could be successful like his father was." "His father was successful?" I asked, making conversation. "Oh yes, a businessman, very well respected." But something in her eyes shifted when she said it, and I wondered if that was entirely true. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for most of it, insisted on it. Sophia was my only child. I wanted her to have everything. Derek seemed appropriately grateful, though I noticed he made several comments about wanting to contribute more and feeling uncomfortable being supported by his in-laws. "It's what families do," I told him. "We support each other." "Still," he'd said, "a man should be able to provide for his own wedding." There was that word again. Man. Provide. Like it was all about him and his ego rather than about celebrating their love. For their wedding gift, I gave them the apartment on Beacon Street. A beautiful 2-bedroom with high ceilings and original moldings, worth about $800,000. I put it in Sophia's name, structured through a trust I controlled until she turned 35. "This is too much," Derek had said when I gave them the keys. "Nonsense. Your family now." "But it's only in Sophia's name?" "It's structured that way for tax purposes," I'd explained, which was partially true. The full truth was that I always protected my daughter's assets, and I wasn't putting an $800,000 property in the name of a man I'd known for less than a year. I saw something flicker in Derek's eyes then, something cold. But it passed quickly, replaced by a smile and a thank you. The first year of their marriage seemed fine. They came to Sunday dinners most weeks. Derek was charming, helpful, always complimenting my cooking or my home. He talked about his job as a financial analyst, about his plans to move up in the company. But gradually, I started noticing things. The way Derek would interrupt Sophia when she was talking, then act like he hadn't. The way he'd make small criticisms disguised as jokes about her weight, her cooking, her career choices. "Soph's always been too sensitive," he'd say with a laugh. "She takes everything so personally." Sophia started canceling our monthly lunch dates. The first time, she said Derek had planned a surprise for them. The second time, work was too busy. The third time, she didn't really have an excuse, just apologized and promised to reschedule. "Is everything okay?" I asked her directly during one of those canceled phone calls. "Of course, Mom, everything's great. Derek he likes us to spend weekends together, couple time." But I could hear something in her voice, something tight and strained. I invited them both to Thanksgiving last year. Derek arrived already irritated about something. He drank too much before dinner and made that comment about me not knowing when to pass the baton to the younger generation. The table had gone silent. Sophia had turned bright red. "Derek didn't mean anything by it," she'd said quickly. "He's just had a stressful week at work." But he had meant something by it. I could see it in his eyes. He resented me. Resented my success, my control over the family assets, my relationship with Sophia. After they left that night, I'd pulled up my laptop and started researching Derek Brennan more thoroughly than I had before the wedding. What I found concerned me. His LinkedIn showed 3 jobs in 5 years. Not unusual for someone building a career, but the pattern suggested he had trouble staying places long term. His social media was carefully curated, lots of photos in expensive restaurants, wearing designer clothes, projecting success. But his current salary as a mid-level analyst couldn't support that lifestyle. That's when I hired the private investigator. The report came back 2 weeks before Christmas, $47,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards. A complaint filed with HR at his previous job about aggressive and inappropriate behavior toward female colleagues. Nothing that resulted in firing, but enough that it was noted. And most disturbing, a restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend named Jennifer Morrison 5 years ago, citing controlling behavior, unwanted contact, and intimidation. The order had been temporary and was never made permanent because Jennifer had moved to California and Derek had agreed to leave her alone. But it was there, a pattern of control and aggression that I recognized from the stories I'd heard from other women over the years. I'd called Sophia to my office the day after I got the report, tried to approach it gently. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Derek." She'd immediately gotten defensive. "What about him?" "I'm concerned about some things I've learned. About his finances, about his employment history." "Have you been investigating my husband?" Her voice had gone cold in a way I'd rarely heard. "I wanted to make sure you were safe, that you were being taken care of." "I'm 32 years old, Mom. I don't need you checking up on my husband like he's some kind of criminal." "Sophia, he has significant debt that he hasn't told you about. And there was an incident at his previous job. Stop." She'd held up her hand. "Just stop. Derek told me you'd do this. He said you can't stand not being in control, that you'd try to undermine our marriage because you can't stand that I'm building my own life. That's not true. I just want you to be safe. I am safe. Derek is a good man who's had some bad luck. Yes, he has some debt from when he was younger. He's told me about that. We're working on it together. And the job thing? His boss was threatened by him because Derek's smarter than he is. That's why he left." Everything she was saying sounded like Derek's words coming out of her mouth. "What about the ex-girlfriend? The restraining order?" Sophia had flinched. He told me about that too. She was unstable. She made things up because he broke up with her. The police never even pressed charges because there was no evidence. Sophia, Mom, I love you. But I need you to trust me. Trust my judgment. Derek and I are happy. We're building a life together. And I need you to respect my marriage and stay out of it. I'd backed off then. What else could I do? She was an adult. She'd made her choice. Pushing harder would only drive her further away, further into Derek's arms. But I'd updated my will that same week, made sure the trust was ironclad, made sure that if Derek tried to get his hands on Sophia's inheritance, there were protections in place. And I'd watched. God, I'd watched so carefully. I noticed how Sophia stopped talking about her own career, her own ambitions. Everything became about Derek's job, Derek's stress, Derek's needs. I noticed how she dressed differently, more conservatively, less of her own style. I noticed how she asked Derek's permission before making plans, even small ones. And I noticed the weight loss, the shadows under her eyes, the way she laughed less. 2 weeks ago, at our last lunch together before Christmas, I'd tried one more time. Sweetheart, are you happy? Really happy? She'd looked at me with tears in her eyes. Why do you keep asking me that? Because you don't seem happy. You seem tired and stressed and not like yourself. Marriage is work, Mom. It's not always easy. But Derek and I are committed to each other. We're going to be fine. Has he ever hurt you, physically? No. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. Never. He has a temper sometimes. He gets frustrated. But he's never hit me or anything like that. But he yells? He punches walls? Sophia had gone very still. How did you know about the walls? I didn't. I was guessing. Oh, sweetheart. It's just when he's really stressed. And it's better than him taking it out on me, right? At least he punches walls instead of me. Hearing my brilliant, beautiful daughter rationalize her husband's violence, even violence against objects, had broken something in me. That's not okay, Sophia. That's not normal or healthy. That's a warning sign. I need to go. She'd grabbed her purse, stood up quickly. I shouldn't have said anything. Derek's fine. We're fine. I need to go. She'd left before I could stop her. And now here we were, Christmas Day. Derek's hands on my shoulders, shoving me to the ground. Derek sitting in Richard's chair like he owned it. Sophia's terrified face as she watched her husband assault her mother. I lay on my bed, ice on my hip, thinking about all the signs I'd seen and all the times I'd held back because I didn't want to lose my daughter. But tonight, Derek had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And tomorrow morning, Sophia would have to make a choice. I just prayed she'd choose herself. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's face above me, that satisfied smirk as I lay on the floor. I felt the impact again, the shock of hitting the marble, the humiliation of being pushed down in my own home. At 5:30 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and got out of bed. My hips screamed in protest. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, I could see the bruise already forming, deep purple and angry, spreading across my lower back and hip. I took a photo of it with my phone. Evidence, if we needed it. By 6 a.m., I was showered, dressed in one of my best suits, charcoal gray Armani, the one I wore to important business meetings when I needed to project absolute authority, and sitting in my home office with coffee and my laptop. At 6:15, my phone rang. Maggie. You're up early, I said. So are you. I figured you didn't sleep. Not much. What time did everyone leave last night? Around 10. Derek kept holding court from Richard's chair, getting drunker and more obnoxious. Sophia spent most of the evening apologizing to people individually. It was painful to watch, Helena. She looked absolutely destroyed. Did she leave with him? She did. But when they were walking out, I heard her tell him they needed to talk. He told her there was nothing to talk about. that you were the one who needed to apologize to him. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. I've already been in touch with my paralegal. The eviction notice is ready. We can have it delivered by 8 a.m. to both Derek's work address and the apartment. The temporary restraining order paperwork is also ready if you want to move forward with that. Not yet. I don't want Sophia to feel like I'm attacking him before she and I have a chance to talk. Let's start with the eviction. That's based on property rights, not criminal charges. Understood. And the trust documents? Bring everything to my office at 8:30. I want to review it all before Sophia arrives at 9. After we hung up, I drafted an email to my business partner, James, explaining that I'd need him to handle this morning's conference call with our investors. Then I texted Sophia. Good morning, sweetheart. I hope you slept well. I'm looking forward to seeing you at 9. Just you. This is important. I love you. She responded almost immediately, which told me she hadn't slept either. I'll be there, Mom. But Derek wants to come too. He says we need to talk about what happened together. I took a deep breath before responding. This conversation is between you and me. Derek is not invited. If he shows up, I won't open the door. 9 a.m., my office, alone. 3 minutes passed before she replied. Okay. At 7:45, I arrived at my office building in downtown Boston. The streets were quiet the day after Christmas, most businesses closed, but my office was open because I'd called my assistant Patricia the night before and asked her to meet me there. Patricia was 63, had been with me for 15 years, and was fiercely loyal. When she saw me walk in, she immediately noticed my slight limp. Good Lord, Helena, are you all right? I'm fine. Just a difficult evening. I didn't elaborate. Patricia didn't need the details yet. Coffee's ready in your office, and I brought those almond croissants you like from the bakery down the street. You're a treasure, Patricia. Maggie arrived at 8:30 sharp, carrying her leather briefcase stuffed with documents. We spread everything out on my conference table: trust documents, property deeds, the updated will, the private investigator's report, copies of Derek's credit card statements that the PI had legally obtained, documentation of the restraining order from 5 years ago. This is a lot to hit her with all at once, Maggie said. She needs to see everything. She needs to understand exactly who she married. And if she chooses him anyway? I'd been asking myself that question all night. Then I respect her choice. But I make it clear what that choice means. No access to family money beyond what's already legally hers. No involvement in the business. No financial bailouts when Derek's debt catches up with them. She wants to choose him. She chooses him completely, including the consequences. Maggie nodded slowly. That's fair. Tough, but fair. At 8:55, Patricia buzzed my office. Helena, your daughter just arrived. She's in the lobby. Send her up, please. My heart was pounding as I heard the elevator ding, heard Sophia's footsteps in the hallway. When she appeared in my doorway, I barely recognized her. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweatshirt, no makeup, her hair in a messy ponytail. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Hi, Mom. Her voice was small. Come in, sweetheart. Sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She saw Maggie and stopped. I thought this was just us. Maggie's here in a professional capacity. Some of what we need to discuss requires legal documentation. But if you want her to wait outside... No, it's fine. Sophia sat down heavily. Derek's furious, by the way, about you kicking him out of the apartment. He's already been served with the notice? A process server showed up at 7:30 this morning. Derek threw the papers at the wall and started yelling about how you're a controlling bitch who's trying to destroy our marriage. I winced at the language, but wasn't surprised. The apartment is held in a trust that I control until you turn 35. Derek has no legal right to be there if you don't want him there. But I do want him there. He's my husband. Sophia, he assaulted me last night. He pushed you. He was drunk and upset and he made a mistake, but he didn't assault you. Maggie spoke up then, her voice calm but firm. Sophia, I was there. I saw what happened. So did 23 other people. Derek put his hands on your mother with force and knocked her to the ground. In the state of Massachusetts, that is the legal definition of assault and battery. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. He said you'd try to make it sound worse than it was. He said you'd gang up on him because you've never liked him. That's not true, I said quietly. I wanted to like him. I tried to like him. But Sophia, there are things about Derek that you need to know. Things I've discovered that concern me greatly. I slid the private investigator's report across the desk toward her. Please read this. She stared at the folder like it might bite her. I don't want to. I know, but you need to. You investigated my husband. You spied on him. I protected my daughter. There's a difference. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she opened the folder and started reading. I watched her face as she went through it, the credit card statements, the documentation of the restraining order, the HR complaints. He told me about the debt, she said finally, her voice shaking. Not all of it. He said it was $15,000, not $47,000, but he said he was working on paying it off. Is he? Have you seen evidence of payments? She was quiet. Sophia, have you checked your own bank accounts lately? Your credit cards? Her face went pale. What do you mean? I mean, has Derek had access to your accounts? Your credit? We're married. Of course we share finances. Pull up your banking app right now. Check your balances. With trembling hands, Sophia took out her phone and logged into her bank account. I watched the color drain from her face completely. There's $12,000 missing from my savings account, she whispered. I had $35,000 in there 6 months ago. I know I did because I checked it before we went on vacation. Now there's 23. Check your credit cards. She did. Oh my God, there's $8,000 charged on my Visa. I didn't make these charges. These are all from stores Derek shops at, clothing stores, electronics. He's been using your money to fund his lifestyle, Maggie said gently. Without your knowledge or permission. That's financial abuse, Sophia. It's also potentially fraud. Sophia was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. He told me he got a bonus. That's where the money for the new suits came from, for the watch he bought last month. He said his company gave him a $10,000 bonus for good performance. Did you see the bonus on his pay stub? He does direct deposit. I've never looked at his pay stubs. I let that sit for a moment. Then I slid another document toward her. This is the restraining order from 5 years ago. The ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Morrison. She filed it because Derek was showing up at her apartment uninvited, calling her dozens of times a day, and according to her statement, punched a hole in her car window when she refused to talk to him. He said she made that up, that she was crazy. Do you really believe that? Or is that just what he told you to believe? Sophia put her face in her hands. Her whole body was shaking. I got up, walked around my desk, and knelt down next to her chair, despite the protest from my bruised hip. Sweetheart, I need you to be honest with me. Has Derek ever hurt you? Has he ever put his hands on you in anger? No, she said through her tears. He's never hit me. But he's done other things, things that scare you. She was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he punches walls when he's angry. He's put 3 holes in the drywall at the apartment. I keep telling myself it's better than him hitting me. But you're afraid that one day it will be you instead of the wall. She nodded, crying harder now. Has he ever destroyed your property? Thrown things? Broken things that belong to you? He threw my phone against the wall 2 months ago because I didn't answer it fast enough when he called me at work. Shattered the screen. He said it was an accident, that it slipped from his hand, but I saw his face. It wasn't an accident. What else, Sophia? Tell me everything. And she did. It all came pouring out. How Derek had slowly isolated her from her friends, saying they were bad influences or didn't understand their relationship. How he criticized her weight constantly, making comments about what she ate, how she looked, suggesting she needed to work out more. How he controlled what she wore, saying certain outfits made her look trashy or like she was trying to get attention from other men. How he checked her phone regularly, demanded to know where she was at all times, accused her of flirting if she was friendly to male colleagues. How he belittled her job, saying marketing was not a real career, and she should quit to focus on supporting his career advancement. How he'd started talking about having children, but in a way that felt threatening rather than exciting. "You'll have to quit work when we have kids," he'd said. "I'm not having my children raised by nannies while you play career woman." And worst of all, how he talked about me. How he called me a manipulative old bitch when Sophia wasn't around. How he said I was clinging to power because I couldn't accept that I was irrelevant. How he told Sophia she needed to choose between her controlling mother and her husband. By the time she finished, my heart was broken into pieces. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Because I knew what you'd say. I knew you'd tell me to leave him, and I wasn't ready to hear that. I kept thinking I could fix it. That if I just loved him enough, supported him enough, he'd go back to being the man I fell in love with. That man never existed, sweetheart. That was a mask, a performance. This controlling, abusive, financially manipulative man, this is who Derek really is." Sophia looked at me with swollen red eyes. "What do I do, Mom? I'm so scared. I don't know how to leave him. What if he hurts himself? He says sometimes that if I ever left him, he'd have nothing to live for. What if he—" "That's manipulation," Maggie interjected firmly. "Classic abuser manipulation. Making you responsible for his emotional state, even his life, so you feel too guilty to leave. Sophia, if Derek threatens self-harm, that's what police and mental health professionals are for. That's not on you to prevent." I took my daughter's hands in mine. "I know you're scared, but I'm here. I will protect you. I will keep you safe. But you have to decide right now, are you ready to leave him? Really leave him? Because if you go back to that apartment, if you tell him everything we've discussed here, he will escalate. Men like Derek, when they realize they're losing control, they get more dangerous, not less." "I know," she whispered. "I've known for months that I needed to leave. I didn't know how." "Maggie has divorce papers ready. You can sign them today. We'll file them tomorrow. Derek will be served within 48 hours. He'll lose his mind." "Probably, which is why you're not going back to the apartment. You're going to stay with me at the house where you're safe. We'll have movers get your belongings while Derek is at work. We'll change all your passwords, freeze your credit, secure your accounts. He won't sign divorce papers. He'll fight it." Maggie pulled out another document. "He'll sign them when we present him with the alternative. Either he signs an uncontested divorce with a clean separation of assets. He takes his debt and his belongings, you keep everything that was yours before the marriage, or we file criminal charges for the assault on your mother last night, press charges for the financial fraud he's committed using your credit cards, and pursue a contested divorce that will cost him tens of thousands in legal fees he can't afford. Plus, we'll make sure his employer knows about the HR complaints from his previous job and the restraining order. We'll make his life very, very difficult." Sophia looked terrified. "That's really harsh." "He pushed your mother to the ground on Christmas Day," Maggie said. "He stole money from you. He's been emotionally and financially abusing you for years. Harsh is the minimum of what he deserves." I squeezed Sophia's hands. "But the choice is yours, sweetheart. I won't force you. If you want to go back to him, if you want to try counseling, if you want to give him another chance, I'll be disappointed and I'll limit his access to family resources, but I won't cut you off. You're my daughter. I love you no matter what you choose. But you think I should divorce him? I know you should divorce him, but knowing it and being ready to do it are two different things." Sophia stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the Boston skyline. It was a gray day, threatening snow. She stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 2 or 3 minutes. Then she turned back to us. "Where do I sign?" Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. Maggie laid out the divorce papers on the conference table. "These are standard, uncontested divorce documents. They stipulate that you were married for 3 years, there are no children, and you're seeking division of assets based on what each party brought into the marriage. Since the apartment and most of your financial assets were gifts from your mother held in trust, Derek has no claim to them. His name isn't on the lease, isn't on any of the accounts. He'll leave with his personal belongings, his car, and his debt." "What about alimony?" "We're not offering any. The marriage was short, you both work, and given his financial abuse of you, he has no grounds to request it. If he wants to fight that, he can try, but he won't win." Sophia picked up the pen with a shaking hand. "He's going to be so angry." "Yes," I said, "which is why we're also filing for a temporary restraining order, for both you and me. He won't be allowed to contact either of us except through his attorney once he retains one." "When will he be served?" "We can have him served at work tomorrow if you sign these today, quick and clean." Sophia took a deep breath, and then she signed her name. Once, twice, 3 times where Maggie indicated. When she was done, she set down the pen and burst into tears again. I held her while she cried. My strong, brilliant daughter who'd been slowly broken down by a man who was supposed to love her. I stroked her hair and let her sob, and I made silent promises to myself about what I would do to Derek Brennan if he ever came near her again. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry for letting him push you, for not standing up for you, for defending him when I knew what he was. Shh, you have nothing to apologize for. You were being abused. You were being manipulated. That's not your fault. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. And you fell in love with someone who turned out to be someone different than who he pretended to be. That happens to smart, strong women all the time. But you're getting out now. That's what matters." After Sophia calmed down, Maggie made copies of all the signed documents and put the originals in her briefcase. "I need to go back to the apartment," Sophia said. "Get my things." "Not alone," I said firmly. "Not ever alone with him again. He's at work right now. He leaves at 7:30 every morning, doesn't come home until 6:30 at night. Even so, I'm coming with you. So is Maggie. We'll bring movers. We'll get everything that matters to you out today while he's gone. He'll know when he gets home tonight. All my stuff will be gone." "Good. Let him know. By the time he gets home, he'll already have been served with divorce papers at his office. It'll all be real and official. No room for him to talk you out of it." We spent the next hour planning logistics. Maggie called a moving company she'd worked with before for clients in similar situations. A company that was discreet and fast. They could have a truck at the apartment by 2 p.m. I called Patricia and asked her to cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week. "Family emergency," I told her. She didn't ask questions. At noon, the 3 of us drove to Beacon Street in my car. Sophia sat in the back seat, quiet and pale. When we pulled up to the building, she stared at it like it was a prison she was finally escaping. "I can't believe I lived here for 3 years and felt trapped the entire time," she said softly. The apartment was exactly as I'd imagined it would be. Expensively decorated but cold. Everything looked like it came from a catalog. There was no warmth, no personality. The walls had holes in them, poorly patched. Evidence of Derek's temper. "Pack everything that matters to you," I told Sophia. "Clothes, personal items, anything with sentimental value. Leave the furniture if you want. We'll get you new furniture." She moved through the apartment methodically, filling boxes with her clothes, her books, her photographs. I found myself in the bedroom, looking at the holes in the wall there too. 3 of them, all at roughly the same height, roughly the same size. Derek's fist. In the closet, I found Sophia's things pushed to one side, taking up maybe a quarter of the space. Derek's clothes took up the rest. Suits, dress shirts, expensive shoes. All bought with money he didn't have, probably with Sophia's stolen credit cards. I was carrying a box of Sophia's shoes out to the living room when I heard Maggie call out from the home office. "Helena, you need to see this." I set down the box and went to the small second bedroom that Derek had claimed as his office. Maggie was sitting at his desk, looking at his computer screen. "The computer was already on," she said. I wasn't snooping. "But look at this." On the screen was an email draft. Not sent yet, just saved in drafts. It was addressed to Richard Ashford, my dead husband's old business email address that I'd kept active because I couldn't bear to close it. The subject line was, "Your widow." The email itself made my blood run cold. "Richard, I know you're dead, but I need you to know that your wife is a controlling, manipulative bitch who's destroying your daughter's happiness. Sophia deserves better than to live in your shadow. She deserves a real family, not a shrine to a dead man. When I finally get control of the business you and Helena built, I'm going to tear down everything you stood for and rebuild it the right way, the way a real man would run it. Your daughter will finally be free of both of you. Derek." I read it 3 times, each time feeling sicker. "He's been planning this," Maggie said quietly. "Planning to take over the business through Sophia. Planning to erase Richard's legacy." "Print it," I said. "Print it and add it to our evidence file." Maggie did, and then we searched the rest of Derek's computer. We found more drafts, emails to potential investors, trying to set up meetings behind my back to discuss new leadership opportunities at Ashford Properties, emails to business contacts, positioning himself as Sophia's representative, a detailed plan for how he'd restructure the company once he had access to it. He'd been playing a long game: marry Sophia, break her down until she was dependent on him, convince her to demand her inheritance early or push me out of the business, then take over everything Richard and I had built. The audacity of it was almost impressive. "Sophia needs to see this," Maggie said. "I know." We found Sophia in the bathroom, packing her toiletries. I showed her the emails on Maggie's phone. She read them in silence, her face going from pale to green. "He was using me," she said finally. "The whole time. It was never about loving me. It was about getting access to your money, to the business. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be." Something in her voice had changed. The sadness was still there, but underneath it was anger, real anger. "I'm glad I'm seeing this now. I'm glad I know exactly who he is. It makes it easier." Easier? Easier to leave. Easier to not feel guilty. Easier to hate him the way he deserves to be hated. The movers arrived at 2:15. By 4 p.m., everything of Sophia's was loaded into the truck. The apartment looked hollow without her things, empty and cold, like Derek himself. Sophia stood in the middle of the living room one last time, looking around. "I'm leaving my key on the counter," she said. "I'm done." We drove back to my house in Beacon Hill just as snow started to fall. Sophia sat in the front seat this time, watching the city pass by. "Thank you, Mom," she said quietly as we pulled into my driveway. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing what I couldn't see. For being strong enough for both of us until I could be strong again." I reached over and took her hand. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We protect our daughters. Always." That night, we ordered Chinese food and ate it in front of the fireplace in my living room. Sophia's belongings were piled in the guest room, her room now, for as long as she needed it. At 8:30, her phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. "He knows," she said, staring at it. "Don't answer. Let it go to voicemail." She did. The phone rang 12 more times over the next hour. Then the texts started. Angry at first. "Where the fuck are you? Where's all your stuff? What the fuck is going on?" Then pleading, "Baby, please call me. We can work this out. I love you." Then threatening, "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back." Sophia blocked his number at 9 p.m. At 9:30, my doorbell rang. We both froze. "It's him," Sophia whispered, fear in her eyes. I checked the security camera on my phone. Derek stood on my front porch, pacing, looking agitated. "I'm calling the police," Maggie said. She'd stayed for dinner, not wanting to leave us alone. "Wait," I said. I opened the intercom. "Derek, you need to leave my property right now." His face snapped toward the camera. "I want to talk to my wife." "Your soon-to-be ex-wife doesn't want to talk to you. You've been served with divorce papers. You know the terms. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. You can't keep her from me. Sophia, come out here. Don't let her do this to us." Sophia was shaking. I put my arm around her. "Derek, this is your final warning. Leave, or you'll be arrested for trespassing." "Fuck you, Helena. This is your fault. You poisoned her against me. You couldn't stand that she loved someone more than she loved you." I hung up the intercom and called 911. The police arrived within 8 minutes. Derek was still on my porch, alternating between yelling and crying. They removed him from the property and issued him a warning about trespassing. Because we didn't have the restraining order in place yet, they couldn't do more than that. But Maggie filed the emergency restraining order paperwork that night. By tomorrow afternoon, Derek wouldn't legally be allowed within 100 yards of either of us. As I locked the door behind the police officers, as I held my trembling daughter, as I thought about the long road ahead of us, court dates and legal proceedings, and Derek's inevitable attempts to fight back, I felt something settle in my chest. This was war. And I'd fought wars before. Derek Brennan had made the mistake of pushing me down on Christmas Day. Now he was going to learn what happened when you declared war on a woman who'd built an empire. He was going to lose everything. And I was going to make sure of it. The restraining order was approved within 24 hours. Derek was served at his office on December 27th at 2 p.m. According to the process server's report, he'd ripped the papers in half and thrown them at the server's feet before storming out of the building. He was fired 2 hours later. I learned this from James, my business partner, who had a contact at Derek's firm. Apparently, Derek's outburst in the office, screaming about his bitch wife and her controlling mother, punching a wall in the break room, frightening several colleagues, had been the final straw. Combined with the fact that HR was now reviewing those old complaints from his previous job, and the restraining order indicated domestic violence issues, the company decided he was a liability they couldn't afford. "Good," Sophia said when I told her. We were sitting in my kitchen, drinking tea. She'd barely slept the night before. Maybe now he'll understand there are consequences. But I knew better. Men like Derek didn't learn from consequences. They just got angrier. The first few days were quiet. Too quiet. Derek didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at the house. The restraining order seemed to be working. Then, on New Year's Eve, things escalated. I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Helena Ashford?" A woman's voice. Professional. "Yes?" "This is Officer Martinez with the Boston Police Department. We need you to come down to the station. There's been an incident involving Derek Brennan." My heart stopped. "Is my daughter safe? Is Sophia—" "Your daughter is fine, ma'am. But Mr. Brennan was arrested tonight for violating the restraining order. He was found outside your property with what appears to be accelerant and matches. We need you to come identify some items and give a statement." I was in my car within 5 minutes, Maggie meeting me at the station. Sophia stayed at the house with Patricia, who I'd called to come stay with her. I wasn't leaving her alone. At the police station, Officer Martinez showed me photographs. Derek had been apprehended by a patrol car 3 houses down from mine, carrying a gas can and a box of matches. In his car, they'd found printed emails, the ones from his computer that we'd discovered, the ones about taking over the business. He'd written notes on them in red ink, angry scrawls about how I'd ruined everything and deserved to pay. He told the arresting officers he just wanted to send a message, Officer Martinez said. He claims he wasn't actually going to do anything, just wanted to scare you. But given the restraining order violation, the accelerant, and some of the things he said during booking, we're holding him on multiple charges: stalking, violation of protective order, making terroristic threats. Will he get bail? Maggie asked. There'll be a hearing tomorrow. Given the severity and the fact that he's clearly escalating, I'd say chances are good the judge will set high bail or deny it altogether. But I can't promise anything. I gave my statement, identified the items, and confirmed the emails were from Derek's computer. By the time we left the station, it was past midnight. New Year's Day. Happy New Year, Maggie said dryly as we walked to our cars. Is it wrong that I'm relieved he's in jail? I asked. It's practical. He's dangerous, Helena. Tonight proved that. If that patrol car hadn't spotted him. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The bail hearing was scheduled for January 2nd. Maggie and I were there, sitting in the courtroom gallery. Sophia had wanted to come, but I'd convinced her to stay home. She didn't need to see Derek like this. Derek looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. When they brought him in, he scanned the courtroom until he found me. The look he gave me was pure hatred. The prosecutor laid out the charges: violation of protective order, possession of accelerant with intent to commit arson, stalking, making terroristic threats. The prosecutor also mentioned Derek's recent job loss, his significant debt, and the fact that he had no stable housing, all factors that made him a flight risk. Derek's public defender, he clearly couldn't afford private counsel, argued that his client was distraught over his divorce, that he'd made poor choices but hadn't actually harmed anyone, that he had ties to the community. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Okonkwo, listened to both sides. Then she looked directly at Derek. Mr. Brennan, you were served with a restraining order on December 27th. That order explicitly stated you were to stay at least 100 yards away from Mrs. Ashford and her property. 4 days later, you were found with accelerant 3 houses away from her home. Can you explain that? Derek stood up, his lawyer trying to pull him back down. Your Honor, that woman has destroyed my life. She turned my wife against me. She got me fired from my job. She's taking everything I worked for. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. I have rights. Mr. Brennan, sit down now, or I'll hold you in contempt. Derek sat, but his face was flushed red, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Judge Okonkwo looked at the papers in front of her. I've reviewed the police reports, the evidence, and the restraining order petition. Mr. Brennan, your behavior demonstrates a clear pattern of escalation. Bail is denied. You'll remain in custody pending trial. Derek exploded. You can't do this. I'll lose everything. 2 bailiffs were already moving toward him. His lawyer was trying to calm him down, but Derek shook him off, pointing at me across the courtroom. This is your fault, he screamed. All of this is your fault. You're a manipulative bitch who can't stand that someone finally stood up to you. I should have pushed you harder. The bailiffs had him in handcuffs before he could finish. They dragged him out of the courtroom, still screaming. I could hear his voice echoing down the hallway. You'll pay for this, both of you. I'll make you pay. The courtroom was silent after he was gone. Judge Okonkwo looked at me with something like sympathy. Mrs. Ashford, I'm extending the restraining order for 1 year and adding provisions for no contact of any kind, including through third parties. If you receive any communication from Mr. Brennan or anyone acting on his behalf, report it immediately. Thank you, Your Honor. Outside the courthouse, Maggie put her arm around me. That was terrifying. That was Derek showing his true colors, I said. Finally, no more mask. No more pretending to be the charming son-in-law. Just rage and entitlement. Sophia needs to see the footage, the court records. I know. When I got home, Sophia was waiting in the kitchen. She looked up when I walked in, fear in her eyes. What happened? I told her everything. Showed her the photos Officer Martinez had emailed me of Derek's car, the gas can, the annotated emails. played her the audio recording Maggie had made of Derek's outburst in court on her phone. Sophia listened to her husband's voice screaming threats, heard him say, "I should have pushed you harder," and something broke in her face. "I was married to that," she said quietly. "I shared a bed with that. I almost had children with that. But you didn't. You got out in time. What if I hadn't? What if you hadn't pushed me to see the truth? What if I'd stayed with him and he'd—" Her voice broke. "Mom, he was going to burn down your house with you in it. Because I left him." "But he didn't. He's in jail. He can't hurt us." "For now. But what about when he gets out? What about when the trial is over and he's released? He'll come after us. You know he will." I'd been thinking about that too. Derek wasn't the type to let this go. Even if he was convicted, even if he served time, he'd get out eventually. And when he did, he'd be even angrier. "We'll deal with that when the time comes," I said. "Right now, he's contained. That's enough." But Sophia shook her head. "It's not enough. I need to know he can never hurt us again. Ever." "What are you thinking?" She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Steel, determination. "I'm thinking we don't just defend against Derek. We destroy him completely. Legally, financially, professionally. We make it impossible for him to ever come near us again." "Sweetheart." "No, Mom. I'm done being scared. I'm done being the victim. He wanted to take over the business, wanted to erase Dad's legacy, wanted to control everything. Let's show him what happens when he messes with the Ashford family." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw myself 30 years ago. Saw the woman she'd always been underneath Derek's manipulation. Strong, smart, ruthless when she needed to be. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." Over the next week, we built our case. Not just the criminal case, the prosecutors were handling that, but our own offensive. Maggie discovered that Derek had been using Sophia's identity to open credit cards. 3 cards she'd never authorized, totaling another $18,000 in debt. That was identity theft, a felony. We reported it to the police and the credit bureaus. James found out that Derek had been contacting our business partners and investors, claiming to represent Ashford Properties, trying to set up meetings to discuss transitional leadership opportunities. That was fraud and misrepresentation. We sent cease and desist letters to everyone Derek had contacted and threatened legal action if any of them had entered into agreements with him. I reached out to Derek's former employer and provided them with documentation of his financial crimes and the restraining order. They were already planning to file their own legal action regarding damage he'd done to their office. The hole he'd punched in the break room wall had required significant drywall repair. I encouraged them to pursue it. Sophia contacted Derek's landlord. He'd been renting a studio apartment since we'd kicked him out, and informed them of his arrest and incarceration. They began eviction proceedings immediately. We contacted every credit card company Derek owed money to and informed them he was in jail facing multiple felony charges. His interest rates skyrocketed and collection proceedings began. Within 2 weeks, Derek had lost his job, his housing, his credit, and his freedom. His debt had ballooned to over $70,000 with the legal fees he was accruing. His mother had stopped answering his calls from jail after he screamed at her for not being able to afford his bail. He had nothing, no one, nowhere to go, even if he did get out. "Is this enough?" Sophia asked one evening. We were going through more documents Maggie had sent over, more evidence of Derek's schemes. "Is it enough for you?" I asked. She thought about it. "I want him to plead guilty. I want him to admit what he did. I want it on record forever that he's an abuser and a criminal. The prosecutor thinks he'll take a plea deal. The evidence is overwhelming. If he goes to trial, he's looking at 5 to 7 years. If he pleads, maybe 2 to 3 with good behavior. I want him to plead. I want him to say out loud, in court, that he violated the restraining order, that he tried to intimidate you, that he stole from me. I want it in the public record." 2 days later, Derek's public defender contacted the prosecutor about a plea agreement. Derek would plead guilty to violation of protective order, stalking, and identity theft. In exchange, the arson-related charges would be dropped. They were harder to prove since he hadn't actually started any fire. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for late January. This time, Sophia came with me. Derek was brought into the courtroom in shackles. He'd lost weight. His hair was greasy, his skin sallow. When he saw Sophia, something desperate flickered in his eyes. "Soph," he started. "Don't," she said firmly. "Don't say my name. Don't talk to me. You have nothing to say that I want to hear." Judge Okonkwo presided again. She went through the plea agreement carefully, making sure Derek understood what he was admitting to. "Mr. Brennan, do you understand that by pleading guilty to these charges, you're admitting that you violated a protective order, that you stalked your ex-mother-in-law with intent to intimidate, and that you used your ex-wife's identity to commit financial fraud?" "Yes, Your Honor." Derek's voice was barely audible. "And you understand that this will result in a criminal record that will follow you for the rest of your life?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you have anything to say before I impose sentencing?" Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned and looked directly at Sophia. "I loved you," he said. "I really did love you. I wanted to be good enough for you, for your family. And I wasn't. I'll never be." Sophia stood up. I tried to pull her back down, but she shook off my hand. "You didn't love me, Derek. You loved what I represented. Money, status, access to a life you thought you deserved, but never earned. You didn't love me. You don't even know who I am. Because if you did, you'd know that I would have loved you without any of it, without the money, without the business, without any of it, if you'd just been honest, if you'd just been kind. But you weren't capable of that. You were only capable of manipulation and control and rage." "Sophia, I'm not finished. You pushed my mother to the ground on Christmas Day. You stole from me. You tried to erase my father's legacy. You tried to burn down my family home. And you did all of that because your ego couldn't handle the fact that women were more successful than you, that my mother built something you could never build, that I had value beyond what I could give you." Her voice was shaking but strong. Everyone in the courtroom was watching her. "I'm glad I married you," she continued, "because you taught me something important. You taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive being broken down and build myself back up, that I can recognize manipulation when I see it. And you taught me that my mother, the woman you tried so hard to turn me against, is the strongest person I know. She saved me from you. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." She sat down. I took her hand and squeezed it. Derek's face had crumpled. He looked like he might cry, but no tears came. Judge Okonkwo looked at him with something close to disgust. "Mr. Brennan, I've been on the bench for 23 years. I've seen a lot of domestic violence cases, a lot of men who think they have the right to control, intimidate, and harm the women in their lives. You're not unique. You're not special. You're just another insecure man who tried to make himself feel big by making someone else feel small." She looked down at her paperwork. "I'm sentencing you to 3 years in state prison for violation of protective order and stalking, to run concurrently with 2 years for identity theft. You'll be eligible for parole after 18 months, but that's not guaranteed. You'll also be required to complete anger management and domestic violence intervention programs. Upon release, you'll be on probation for 5 years, during which time the restraining order will remain in effect. You are never to contact Mrs. Ashford or her daughter again, directly or indirectly. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then we're done here. Bailiff, remove the defendant." Derek was led away. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, Sophia and I stood in the cold January air. It had started snowing again, light flakes drifting down from a gray sky. "It's over," Sophia said wonderingly. "It's really over." "The criminal case is over," I said. "The divorce is almost finalized. But the healing, that's going to take longer." "I know." She looked up at the sky, letting snowflakes land on her face. "But I feel lighter already, like I can finally breathe." Maggie joined us, putting her arms around both of us. "You two were magnificent in there, absolutely magnificent." "We learned from the best," I said, squeezing her back. That night, back at home, Sophia and I sat in Richard's study. His chair, the real one, the one from his office, not the empty one at the dining table, sat behind his desk. I'd kept everything exactly as he'd left it. "Do you think Dad would be proud?" Sophia asked. "Of how we handled this?" I thought about Richard, about his protective nature, his fierce love for his family, his unwillingness to tolerate anyone who tried to hurt the people he cared about. "I think he'd be furious that Derek ever got close enough to hurt either of us," I said honestly. "But yes, I think he'd be proud of how strong you were, how you stood up for yourself." Sophia ran her hand over Richard's desk. "I miss him. Every day." The chair at the dining table, the empty one. Derek was wrong about it, wasn't he? It's not pathetic. It's love. It's memory. It's honoring someone who deserved to be honored. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. After Derek is released from prison, after the restraining order eventually expires, if he ever tries to contact us again, what will we do?" I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd survived so much and come out stronger. "We'll handle it the same way we handled everything else, together, with intelligence, resources, and the absolute certainty that no one gets to hurt the Ashford women and walk away unscathed." Sophia smiled, a real smile, the first genuine one I'd seen in months. "The Ashford women. I like that." "Your father would have liked it too." We sat in his study until late, talking about Richard, about the business, about Sophia's future. She wanted to take on more responsibility at the company, wanted to prove to herself that she was capable, that Derek's constant belittling hadn't been true. "You'll be vice president by spring," I told her, "and someday, when I'm ready, you'll take over completely, because you're brilliant and capable and everything this company needs." "You really believe that?" "I've always believed that. Derek tried to make you doubt it, but it was always true." As we finally headed upstairs to bed, I paused at the dining room. The table was set for breakfast tomorrow, and at the head of the table, Richard's chair sat empty, a folded napkin placed carefully on the seat. Sophia saw me looking at it. "Are you going to keep doing that? Keeping it empty?" "Yes," I said. "For as long as I want to, because it's my chair, my table, my home, and no one, not Derek, not anyone, gets to tell me how to remember the man I loved." "Good," Sophia said, "because I think Dad would want that too." That night, I slept better than I had in months. Derek was in prison, Sophia was safe, our family was healing, the war was over, and we had won. Spring came to Boston with a gentleness that felt like a gift. The snow melted, revealing the garden Richard had planted years ago, crocuses and daffodils pushing through the earth, determined to bloom despite everything. 3 months had passed since Derek's sentencing. 3 months of healing, of rebuilding, of remembering who we were before he tried to break us down. Sophia had moved out of the guest room and into her old childhood bedroom, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. "I need to remember who I was before Derek," she'd told me. The girl who dreamed big, the girl who wasn't afraid. She'd thrown herself into work with a passion I hadn't seen in years. In February, I'd officially made her vice president of Ashford Properties. She'd earned it, not because she was my daughter, but because she was brilliant. In her first month, she'd closed a deal on a commercial property in Cambridge that I'd been negotiating for 6 months. The sellers had been difficult, but Sophia had found common ground, built rapport, sealed the contract. James had been impressed. "She's got your instincts," he'd told me, "and Richard's charm, dangerous combination." "The best combination," I'd corrected him. On a Tuesday in mid-April, Sophia and I were in my office reviewing proposals when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the Massachusetts Department of Corrections. My stomach tightened. Sophia saw my face, and her expression mirrored my concern. I put it on speaker. "Hello?" "Mrs. Ashford, this is Deputy Warden Chen from MCI Cedar Junction. I'm calling to inform you that Derek Brennan attempted to make contact with you through a third party. An inmate he's been housed with was released yesterday and was given a letter to mail to you. The letter was intercepted during routine screening." "What did it say?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "I can't disclose the full contents, but I can tell you it violated the no-contact provisions of his restraining order. We've added 30 days to his sentence for the violation and moved him to restricted housing. He won't have the opportunity to attempt contact again." After the call ended, Sophia and I sat in silence. "He still can't let go," she said finally. "Even in prison, even after everything." "Men like Derek don't let go," I said. "They just run out of options." But that phone call had reminded us both that Derek's release date was still out there. 18 months from now, maybe sooner with good behavior, though this latest violation had set him back. "When he gets out," Sophia said, "I won't be afraid anymore. I've spent 3 months learning to be strong again. By the time he's released, I'll be even stronger." We both will be. In May, the divorce was finalized. Derek had signed the papers from prison, had no choice really. The settlement was exactly what we'd proposed. Sophia kept everything that had been hers. Derek left with his debt and his criminal record. Maggie brought the final decree to my house on a Saturday afternoon. The three of us, Maggie, Sophia, and I, sat in the garden with champagne. "To freedom," Maggie toasted. "To family," I added. "To second chances," Sophia finished. We drank, and I watched my daughter's face. There was still sadness there sometimes, still moments when she'd go quiet, and I knew she was thinking about the 3 years she'd lost. But there was also joy, real joy, the kind that comes from knowing you survived something terrible and came out whole. That evening, Sophia and I walked through the garden together. Richard's roses were beginning to bloom, deep red and fragrant. "I've been thinking about the dining room," Sophia said. "About Dad's chair." "What about it?" "I used to think it was sad, keeping it empty. But now I understand. It's not about being stuck in the past. It's about honoring love, about saying that someone mattered so much that their absence still has presence." I felt tears prick my eyes. Exactly. When I have my own family someday, if I'm brave enough to try again, I want to teach them that. That love doesn't end just because someone's gone. That memory is sacred. "You'll be brave enough," I assured her. "When you're ready, when you meet someone who deserves you." Someone nothing like Derek. Nothing like Derek, I agreed. In June, we hosted a summer solstice party, the first real gathering we'd had since that disastrous Christmas. Some of the same people were there, Maggie, James, business associates, friends. But this time, the atmosphere was different, light, happy. I watched Sophia work the room, confident and poised. She was wearing a yellow dress that brought out her smile, talking animatedly with one of our investors about a new development project. This was my daughter, the real one, the one Derek had tried to bury. Mrs. Chen from the country club approached me with a glass of wine. "Helena, I have to tell you, what you and Sophia did, standing up to that man, it was inspiring. My daughter was in a similar situation last year. Watching you two gave her the courage to leave." "I'm glad," I said, meaning it. No one should have to stay in a situation like that. "She's doing much better now, like Sophia, stronger." After the guests left, Sophia and I stood in the dining room, looking at the table. Richard's chair sat at the head, empty as always. "Do you think Derek understands now?" Sophia asked. "That the chair was never the point? That power doesn't come from where you sit, but from who you are?" "I doubt it. Men like Derek don't learn. They just blame." "I feel sorry for him sometimes," Sophia admitted. "Then I remember what he did, what he tried to do, and the pity disappears. You're allowed to feel both things. He's a broken person who broke other people. That's sad, but it doesn't excuse anything." Sophia nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out the chair next to Richard's, the one that had always been mine, and sat down. She gestured to Richard's empty chair. "Tell me a story about Dad," she said. "A good one. One I haven't heard." So I did. I told her about the time Richard had surprised me with a trip to Paris for our 10th anniversary, how he'd learned basic French just to order at restaurants, how he'd gotten us hopelessly lost in the Marais, but insisted it was romantic wandering. I told her about the time he'd stayed up all night helping me prepare a presentation for my biggest client, how he'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I told her about love that was real, partnership that was genuine, the kind of marriage Derek had pretended to want but never actually understood. "That's what I want someday," Sophia said when I finished. "What you and Dad had. You'll find it, when you're ready." By August, Derek had served 6 months, another year at minimum before he'd be eligible for parole. Sophia had stopped thinking about him every day. Some days, she didn't think about him at all. She'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates with men Maggie's law firm colleagues set her up with. "I'm not ready for anything real yet," she'd told me, "but I'm ready to remember that not all men are like Derek." She'd also started therapy, really committed to it, twice a week with a trauma specialist. "I need to understand why I ignored the red flags," she'd explained, "so I never ignore them again." I was proud of her, prouder than I'd ever been. In September, we launched a new initiative at Ashford Properties, a partnership with a domestic violence shelter, providing transitional housing for women leaving abusive situations. Sophia had proposed it, had done all the research, had made it happen. "We can afford it," she'd told James and me in the board meeting. "And more importantly, we should do it, because I know what it's like to need a safe place to go. I was lucky. I had my mother. Not everyone has that." The board approved it unanimously. At the ribbon cutting for the first property, a beautiful renovated brownstone that would house 6 women and their children, Sophia gave a speech. She didn't mention Derek by name, but everyone who knew our story understood. "My mother taught me that real strength isn't about control," she said. "It's about protection. It's about using your resources and your power to lift others up, not push them down. This building represents that philosophy. It represents the idea that everyone deserves safety, dignity, and a second chance." I stood in the crowd, tears streaming down my face, watching my daughter transform her pain into purpose. That night, we had a small dinner. Just Sophia, Maggie, Patricia, James, and me. 5 people who'd become family through crisis and loyalty. "To the Ashford women," James toasted, "may they continue to terrify unworthy men for generations to come." We laughed, and the sound filled my dining room. Richard's chair sat empty at the head of the table, but it didn't feel sad anymore. It felt right, a reminder of love that endured, of the man who'd helped build this family and this legacy. After everyone left, Sophia helped me clean up. We worked in comfortable silence, loading the dishwasher, putting away leftovers. "Mom," she said as we finished, "thank you." "For what?" "For not letting me stay, for pushing me when I needed pushing, for being strong enough to fight for both of us when I couldn't fight for myself." I pulled her into a hug. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We fight for our daughters. Always. Even when it means war? Especially then." We stood there in my kitchen, holding each other, 2 women who'd survived a battle and come out stronger. Derek had thought he could break us. thought he could take Richard's place, claim Richard's legacy, control Richard's family. He'd been wrong about everything. The chair at the head of my table would remain empty, not because I was stuck in the past, but because I chose to honor it. Because that chair represented something Derek never understood. That real power comes from love, from building something meaningful, from protecting the people who matter. Derek was in prison, alone with his rage and his regrets. And we were here, free, strong, together. He'd pushed me down on Christmas Day, thinking it would make him powerful. Instead, all he'd done was prove that he was exactly what I'd suspected all along, a small, insecure man who would never be worthy of sitting at our table. Richard's chair would stay empty, but our hearts were full. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.